A study by Kansas State University and Merck Animal Health analyzed the results of 2 years' worth of sales through Superior Livestock, specifically looking at the factors that affected those calf prices. Today, Dr. John Hutchison with Merck Animal Health is my guest as we discuss these findings.
The most unfortunate thing I see people do sometimes is have a really good plan in their head and do a lot of things that they need to do and do it right, but then don't find the place that pays for those attributes and pays for that.
From management practices to programs and vaccination protocols to weaning, are you seeing a justifiable rate of return for the cost of implementing them?
You got to be true to yourself. You can't cheat on cost.
There's some things that are easy to do and offer a good rate of return, while others you may need to think through. Find out what these are on today's episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Well, hi, everyone, and we welcome you here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills. We're glad to have you joining us on our program today. This is episode 116, and if you want to go back, if you missed something here today and you want to go back and listen to it, the podcast site is workingranchradio.com. You can find today's show. You can also find any previous shows that you want to go back and listen to as well. Also, let us know if you hear something, you like it, leave a comment, let us know. It helps me to know in moving forward on other future programs that we may have. And on the other side of the coin, if you hear something that you didn't like or you got questions about, please feel free to reach out and let me know as well. My email address is justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Well, we're going to get right to it here in just a few moments, but as I said in the opening, our program today, we're going to be looking at a study that was done by Kansas State University along with Merck Animal Health as part of that, as they reviewed 2 years worth of sale results from Superior Livestock and analyzing all of the different factors that affected those calf prices that you might see. And it could be anything from management practices such as dehorning your cattle to implants, non-implants, also program cattle as we've talked about, all the different types of programs that are out there like GAP or NHTC, BQA, a lot of those things. In addition, we're also going to be exploring what did it look like when they evaluated the vaccination protocols and weaning, such as we've heard of these things like VAC 45 and VAC 60. So a lot of different things we're going to be talking about with that. I'm excited to have Dr. John Hutchison, who's the Director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health, to go through that with us today. And I think you'll find it very valuable as you begin that process, if you haven't already, in marketing your cattle for 2023. Well, a thank you to our sponsor of this segment today, the American Simmental Association. They've been helping ranchers move their operations forward with pedigree knowledge and performance records, and also now very advanced genomics. That's helping you, the rancher, with more predictability so that you can make good management decisions that increase profitability. SimGenetics is profit through science. Find out more at simmental.org. Other sponsors today include Allflex. Cattle identification and record keeping should be easy. To find out more, you can go to their website at allflexusa.com. Well, the Captain Tim O'Byrne is in this week. He is publisher and editor of Working Ranch Magazine. And here's this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody out there in Working Ranch Radio Land. Justin, as you and the listeners and the readers know, I've taken it upon myself to make sure that I go in and check out the meat case in the big cities every single chance I get. Why? Because I'm nosy. Everybody knows that with my Friday post. I'm probably one of the most nosiest guys I know. So what have I found in the last 5 years? I was watching really carefully the amount of room afforded the, I don't know what to call them, fake beef stuff. That's, I guess, the best way to explain it. Any of the fake beef stuff, like the burgers and some sausage and stuff like that. I have watched the large box stores devote up to, I've seen at one point, probably about 3 years ago, I've seen up to 48 inches of of space in the actual display case, right next to beef, right next to our product, our good, wholesome product that only has beef in it. And what I've noticed lately is a decline in that from 48 inches to, I think the last time I reported in the magazine, in my local big box store, which is totally urban people going in there from all over the place, and it was down to 18 inches. So today, I'm reporting, for whatever it's worth, that particular big brand box store that serves probably most of the Pacific Northwest and down into the Southwest, went in there last week, and it's a big store, 13, 14 checkouts. There is no more meat case, display case, inch devoted to that product anymore. And I asked the manager of the meat section, why is that? And he said just basically sales. So there's my report for today. Do with it what you want, folks. And on another note, now we're getting into high production here in the summertime, so keep an eye on those ranch kids, all right? Keep them safe as best you can. And ranch kids, listen to me. Listen to what your elders are telling you to do, and don't deviate, all right? It's dangerous out there, and we want to keep you safe. So God bless, and back to you, Mr. Justin.
All right, thanks, Captain. And yeah, good advice there at the very end there. It is that time of the year where all get busy, and sometimes we get in a hurry of doing things and just, do what it takes to just go the extra step and just be safe out there, everybody. So when we come back, we're going to take a break here. And when we do, Dr. John Hutchinson will be joining us as we're going to be talking about looking at all of these results coming out of this 2-year study on analyzing Superior Livestock's auction data and the factors affecting those calf sales. It's some interesting information. Stay with us. We're going to get into it when we return on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Big cows come with big feed bills, which is why smart genetic selection can pay off in your cow herd. Did you know Simmental-influenced cows are an average 74 pounds lighter at maturity than Angus-sired counterparts, according to a recent U.S. Meat Animal Research Center study? Now, while Simmental is sized for more efficient gains, 20-year genetic trend lines also show the breed offers reliable calving ease, early growth, and cow longevity. That's a balanced herd built for profit. SimGenetics, giving you more per head, period. Stand strong, Simmental. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here. And how many of you landowners out there, and maybe you've thought about some of the recreational opportunities that your ranch has to offer? Maybe you haven't really thought about it. I know for myself, I've toyed around with, is there some extra income that we could be realizing if we took advantage of some of the recreational possibilities that it has to offer? And so a few weeks ago, I actually did an interview with Land Trust. It's a company out of Bozeman, Montana, but I sat down with Nick DeCastro as we talked about how to capture the recreational value in your land. And it's something that they specialize directly in connecting landowners with sportsmen looking to pay for access to your land. It's not like any government programs, leases, or outfitters, and they partner to build relationships with these sports people and keeping landowners really in full control out of it. Now, if you have a lot of questions about it and regarding some liability things, I encourage you to go back and listen to this episode. Again, it was episode 113. We talk about all the liability things. And like one of the things I just mentioned, landowners stay in 100% control and choose what you have to offer, how much it costs, when it's available, property rules, and who you're even going to allow on the property. Now, if you're wondering about, what would that entail? Well, of course, hunting comes to mind for a lot of us. Now, that may not be an option for some if you're already working with an outfitter or various things. Maybe you want to do hunting. Maybe you want to start out with turkey hunting. Also fishing, or what about RV camping? Food foraging was something that came up. Now, if you don't know what that is, I encourage you to go and listen to the show. But also you could do farm and ranch tours, or maybe giving people access to camp or to ride horseback on your place. But it's limitless in terms of the opportunities or the things that you could be looking at with that. So I encourage you to check it out. You can go to their website at landtrust.com. And for a lot of folks, you have questions. You may not even know where to start or how to price it or how to value it. They have a lot of those questions because they work with a lot of landowners much in the same way. And if you want to know how fast it works, I can tell you right now, and talking to them the other day, this income can happen pretty quickly. And they were sharing with us that within 1 week of listing their properties, there were 3 landowners have already had bookings, and one of those bookings has already been completed. So this can happen as quickly as you want it to happen, or you can set it out in the future to happen when a certain time of the year works the best for you. But give them a call or check them out online at landtrust.com. There's contact information there that you can visit with them about that. And by the way, let them know that you heard it here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Well, as we head now into our featured interview today, this is an interesting topic for me because I'm always analyzing and always wanting to know, what could I be doing to, from a management standpoint and various things when it comes to profitability on our ranch. Well, today we're going to be talking about factors affecting calf prices. This was a study that was done through calf sales of Superior Livestock Auctions and then put together by Kansas State University and Merck Animal Health. And joining me to talk about all of the results that came out of this is Dr. John Hutchinson, who is the Director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health. And John, thanks for joining us here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
You bet, Justin. I appreciate you taking the time out and having me on the show. I think I have some good information to share with ranchers around the country.
You bet. I want to talk about this because this is a study that that came down. It was with Superior. It was analysis of some calf sales through Superior Livestock Auction, and it was done a study by Kansas State University and Merck Animal Health. And I'm not going to go and try to explain a lot because I have you on the show. So I want you to lay out really what this study was to start with, and then we can start getting into the findings later on. But lay out really what this study was, the years it took place, and the scope of it all.
You bet, Justin. And you got it right. Obviously, we couldn't have done this without Superior Livestock Auctions' help. And so they have numerous sales across the country. And so we collect the data from those sales. So the sales that happen, in this case, between January of 21 and December of 22, so 2 years of data, we had right at 2.6 million head of calves in that database. That they made up the number of head. There was a total that equated to 15,000 and almost 300 lots of cattle. And so, these are lot loads in those sales. And so, that's where the data source came from. And that data then goes to Dr. Tonzer and Dr. Renter at Kansas State University. And so Dr. Tonzer is in the ag economics department. Dr. Renter's over at the vet school. And so they do all the heavy lifting. And then I get to talk to people like you and your listeners out there about all the good attributes of the data. So they kind of mine through the data, do some QC, and put it all together and give it to me and Merck Animal Health. And then we try to get the message out.
Mm-hmm. And I see in this some of the data in there. So the average lot contained about 160 head of calves, average weight 559. So you're really dialed in on a good average, what we would probably see across the country. And
you bet.
And folks, we're going to work through some of this stuff, and then at the end we'll have an analysis and draw it all together. But let's start from the top and work through some of these items. I don't know if there was any in any particular order, but from your perspective, let's start at the top of one of the attributes that do affect these calf prices.
You bet. And, maybe I'll start with some management factors.
Okay.
Some of these, Justin, aren't unusual to people. But, before we get started, maybe there's one other thing we should level set is that, ranchers out there, I would encourage them, as we are talking now in April, and calves are hitting the ground, have hit the ground from north to south, where they're at in that whole process, but have a marketing plan for your calves. These ranchers out here create calves. Mm-hmm. And so having a marketing plan as early as you can is the best way to take advantage of the things you do and get the value from those. And so that's one thing I've seen that makes, selling in a sale like this that lists all these attributes as badges. So you might hear me say, all these badges or all these different attributes. They list them out, and buyers that come onto that to buy calves recognize those badges, and there's confidence in those ranchers doing that stuff. And so you think about management factors. And again, I'm going to say this more than once, Justin, that this is what the buyers pay for. They use their checkbook to make these, I'll call them premiums. Sometimes they use their, take away money, but, let's start with no horns. There is, our data set over that 2 years of period with those 2.6 million head of calves, there was almost a $4 a hundredweight premium, which equates to almost a $20 bill for polled calves. So calves with no horns. And so think about that. Frame. I think most ranchers hopefully know where their calves move through the system to a feed yard and move. And if you've watched carcass weights over the years, what have carcass weights done? They continue to go up. Well, they need calves with medium to large frame to hold those big weights, to get them to where they are and to produce the carcasses. And the amount of pounds we do, as our supply goes down, pounds continue to rise, and our beef production, doesn't drop as precipitously as numbers do. And so, medium to medium and large frame calves get a premium. And so, those that are smaller frame don't. Now, you're going to ask me some questions around that, I hope, but it's, you got to keep your cow size in check with your environment.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what these buyers are buying as it relates to frame. Flesh is the same way. They don't like fleshy cattle. And so they want cattle carrying some medium to light medium flesh. And, there's some pretty good premiums, $2 to $3 a hundred premium on the flesh of those animals. And again, that's all management related. Weight variation, they don't like uneven lots of cattle. They want cattle that are tight. They have the weight range pretty tight. And so, there's a big discount on very uneven cattle. And so, there's ways to address that management wise. You and I, before we got started, were visiting about a few things. Get those calves born earlier in the breeding season. Think about your bulls and think about your bull power to, get cows bred earlier in the breeding season so they calve earlier, and those calves are going to, be more uniform and be more closer in age. And so if you can do that, there's quite a bit of eliminating the discount on those uneven loads of cattle. And so those are a few things. I call it kind of management at the ranch when we talk about no horns, flesh, frame, weight variation. Those are some big dollars that added up in this database.
When you talk about management, something that comes to my mind, and it correlates a little bit to what you said, it's never too early to begin to put together a marketing plan. And I think when you hit on that point, I think of a couple things. I had a show last fall where we were talking about with one of my guests, when you're doing fall work with your cattle, how can you make the most out of it? And really a lot of that has to do with planning. And part of this management that we're looking at is really stepping back away and planning what that year is going to look like from a when are you going to brand, when are you going to precondition, how can you utilize those times, and then at that same time when you know preconditioning, then you can know when you can start to market your calves. So really the element of having a plan early is pretty key to this, to starting out.
No question. You couldn't have said it better. I the most unfortunate thing I see people do sometimes is have a really good plan in their head and do a lot of things that they need to do and do it right, but then don't find the place that pays for those attributes and pays for that.
You bet.
And so, you said it well, Justin. I mean, a plan is needed. And, it brings us into a little different topic is, maybe we should have started with some of the factors that do not affect calf price. And so one of those factors was that kind of plays into this conversation is implant status. So if those calves had a calfhood implant, there is no change in price. So those that were implanted or those that were not implanted, there was no difference in those dollars per hundredweight. And so you think about this year and you think about what's going on, where the calves are projected in price this fall and the drought that continues to linger along in some parts of the United States. 25 pounds of extra weight at $2.50, $2.75 is approaching a $50 bill. And so I think about those kind of things because back to planning your marketing, are you participating in a program that might not allow them? But we know about 90% of the calves when they reach the feed yard do get implanted. And so, that's something else to think about. That no effect on sales price. The big one was implant status.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. That was something that caught my attention when I saw some of these results early on. My guest today, folks, is John Hutchinson. He was the Director of Beef Technical Services with Merck Animal Health. We're talking about some factors affecting calf prices. It's a research study that was done with the use of sales off a Superior Livestock auction. Kansas State University put this all together, the results on this, and we're going to continue with John when we come back. I have more questions about it as well, as we're going to continue to look at some of these other factors that they looked at in this that did affect these calf prices. We're going to continue when we come back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills. Our topic today is coming from a study that was done with the use of looking at some sale results from Superior Livestock Auction, and it was results put together by Kansas State University and Merck Animal Health, looking at traits that impacted sale prices. Joining me today is Dr. John Hutchinson, who's the Director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health. And in the first segment, we were talking specifically about some things. We were talking about management practices that as ranchers we need to begin our marketing plan early, some things that we can do to tighten up the weights of our calves, have some consistency in there. Also talking a little bit about implants and realizing that there was really no effect to our calf prices on the implanting side of things. John, when we look at where we're at in our marketing our calves now, I mean, it's just a common terminology is program cattle. Okay, so this would be cattle that are entered into programs, specific types of programs. There are lots of different ones out there. So let's go through that. I know that's probably a pretty broad topic in a way, but let's look at some of those factors that you saw when you were sifting through these results.
Yeah, and then the way I'll approach some of these programs is we'll maybe dive deeper into a few, because they have some other implications around genetics and things like that. So no, it'll be good. And this, again, maybe I sound like a broken record, but, I want people to have success. And so, back to that marketing plan, these programs are all embedded in that is you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan to know what the program is, what you're entering into, what the cost is, what the price potential is. And so, I know ranchers are pretty dang good, particularly in these times with high input cost, is keeping the pencil sharp. So one thing to add before we dive deep into this is on these programs, understand the cost, understand that you have to have a marketing program to be in these, and, just some of those things, again, marketing plan, cost, and return. Make sure you have a good understanding of what it's going to take to enter in some of these programs. And then the first one we'll talk about, Justin, is my soapbox. Okay. And so it's Beef Quality Assurance Program. And so we've been following this for 4 years in the database. This is just the last 2 years, but there's a premium paid for those calves that come into the sale on this Superior Livestock Auction and have a badge, so to speak, that the producer is BQA certified. And I know it is not that difficult to get BQA certified. And I would challenge every rancher listening to this show at this point in time is if you're not Beef Quality Assurance certified, that's the first thing you ought to do when you quit listening to Justin and I. There's $1.50 a hundredweight. They paid $8 a head more for those that were BQA certified. And so it almost ought to be table stakes. And so as the beef industry keeps evolving and consumers want more transparency, I want to see this premium go away, because I can't compare it to a base of no BQA. That's my goal. That is my goal. I know at Merck we really push hard and working with state associations and national associations. It's pretty hard not to find a beef quality assurance program. So that's my soapbox, Justin, because that program brought you $10 a head, $1.50 a hundred, and every year it just keeps going and going. And so you see, I'm reading maybe too much into it, but it's important for the beef industry, in my opinion, to make sure we're all beef quality assurance certified as we raise these animals that eventually sits on a plate somewhere around the world.
Yeah. And we've had a program on here before where we've talked about that. And I think you probably did a good job just explaining the importance of that and how easy it is. And folks, it is easy. I mean, check it out. Go to their website. Let's talk about some of these other programs.
Yeah,
we got Natural Plus, GAP, NHTC,
That's
all
right.
these things.
So there's some of these programs. So you mentioned GAP. So the Global Animal Partnership Program, it brings back close to a $20 bill, almost $4 a hundredweight. And that one's, again, it's a program. There's certain rules you have to follow, check them out and understand what you have to do or what you don't have to do. The Natural Plus program that we reported on is it's kind of a superior branded program, Natural Plus. So it's like a never ever program. And, it brought back $5 a head. So, I think they're trying to get their legs under it a little bit. Not as many animals in that, but nonetheless, it was significant uptick on premium as it relates to dollars per hundred and dollars per head, like the GAP program. The other one that's a pretty big program that we see a lot of impact on is the NHTC. And so as people, non-hormone treated cattle, it was almost $6 a hundred premium, which, gets you close to $33 a head. And so, those three are kind of all natural, never ever non-hormone treated. They've got some specific requirements, but there's some value there if you want to participate in some of those type of programs. Another program that we saw that has a big impact and is called Progressive Genetics. And we call it that because that's the superior. They've got a list of seed stock producers that they publish on their website. If you buy bulls from them and you use them in your cow herd, and there's some paperwork that goes along with that, and you can demonstrate that you've used those genetics, then it's a $10 a head premium. Almost, again, about $1.50, $1.60 a hundredweight on using Progressive Genetics. And I know that's a superior program, and I'm grateful for them to be able to allow us to dig through this data and provide information to producers so people can continually get better. But I think that one sends a pretty powerful message about buyers appreciate good genetics. And I think most good genetics are, cattle that have pretty good level of muscling. That's my take on it, Justin. You might have some things to add to that, but Progressive Genetics was the program and there was a premium there. But I think it just shows the value of good bull genetics and how important that is for these, again, I call cow-calf guys calf creators. That's what they do. That's what they do best and create calves. And so, just think about the bull battery that they have. Again, I think it's good for cow-calf folks to ground themselves on how their calves move through the system, and particularly, if cow-calf people haven't gone to, say, a feed yard and just seen where the calves end up and the technology that's being used and the efficiencies that are trying to be gained, and, how genetics come to play, because we're an amazing beef industry as cattle numbers decline. Production doesn't decline at the same rate, and a lot of that is just grounded and rooted on genetics. And so it's just pretty cool to see a database like this that sees that, some recognized seed stock producers, and using those bulls, that those buyers are willing to add another $10 to your calf. And so it's, again, it's really, really, I think, powerful in the message. And then those other programs we talked about have their things that you have to follow and programs you have to follow. But let's get into the next biggest program, and that's health programs.
Yeah, that's just exactly where I was going to head. And folks, if you're listening, keep in mind, there's still one question rumbling around in my head, and we're going to get to that in our next segment, because we're going to analyze all this, and I'm going to have John kind of put this into context of the cost versus the income on this. But we need to get through these. And so you're right, John. The probably besides really the programs that we were just talking about, the big thing is these health. The value-added health programs. So let's talk about how that's affected these markets.
You bet. It is the largest premium that's paid on a dollars per hundredweight basis. There is no question, and I don't think it's just unique to this database, but it continues to, every year we do this, those premiums get bigger and bigger and bigger, because the value of healthy calves moving through our production system are an extreme premium. And these buyers are willing to pay lots of dollars for that. I mean, you're talking about, somewhere between $7 and $9 a hundredweight participating in these value-added health programs. And I think, ground us a little bit, these were built so that cattle producers like ranchers could start the whole immunization process of these cattle, because we move calves from cow-calf to sometimes background or stocker, and then we move them into, say, finishing feed yard type scenarios. And so, those calves are like our kids when we send them to school. We've got to have some immunization prior to them mixing with all the other kids in the world, and cattle aren't any different. And so these value-added health programs are rooted on immunology. Mm-hmm. They're rooted on getting these animals, not just vaccinating them. I challenge our producers that it's not just vaccinating. It's also, vaccinating is the process, but your goal is to immunize them and get them to respond to these vaccines that we're trying to get their immune system used to seeing these types of viruses and bacteria, so they can respond to them when they come in contact with them as they move through the system. And so let's walk through some of these value-added programs. And so, if you give 2 shots and don't do anything else, there's still a premium. So, getting your shots in them, say branding or pre-weaning or weaning, there is some value in terms of that, but that's the lowest value. Where the value really kicks in, and again, we got to sharpen our pencil, but these VAC 45 and VAC 60 programs. And so what that means is they get 2 rounds of Clostridial, they get 2 rounds of viruses, they get 2 rounds of bacteria vaccine, and they get, we recommend that you deworm and we recommend that you implant, but they stay at home for 45 days after they've been weaned. Mm-hmm. And so they're home-raised calves, they stay at home, they get bunk broke, they get water trough broke, they, get to stretch, get the wean out of them. How people do it there's a lot of different ways. Fence line weaning, there's abrupt weaning, there's a lot of different ways to try to keep the stress down, but we're talking almost $9 a hundredweight. And not only is it $9 a hundredweight, it's $9 a hundredweight on a calf that's been at home gaining weight for 45 days. So, your weaning weight's not, if it's 559, you're not selling a 559 pound calf. You're probably selling a 650 pound calf. Mm-hmm. And so you're selling a 650 pound calf that's bump broke, water trough broke. He's been immunized and he stayed at home and he weighs more and he brings $9 a hundredweight more. That's a $50 bill. Mm-hmm. And so huge impact. The thing that I think people, can get from this data is that's the big jump, Justin. VAC 60, holding them for 15 more days. There was no more dollars per hundredweight. It was about $7 a hundredweight. Statistically, 9 and 7 wasn't different. And so those VAC 60 home-raised calves and those VAC 45, once you did VAC 45, it seemed like the buyers, they didn't pay any more for another 15 days at home. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's gives some guidance of when people are trying to decide to do that or not to do that. With feed prices the way they are and facilities that come into play, there's a lot of thought process that has to go on these value-added health programs. But there's a lot of reward there, particularly if you sell them in a place that is looking for more healthier calves moving through the system. And I think the buyers have resoundingly told us that, these value-added health programs, they pay for what they are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good for our cow-calf producers that can manage that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Dr. John Hutchison, he's the Director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health, is my guest today. We're talking about factors affecting calf prices. It was a study that was done through the selling years of 2021 and 22 on Superior, and factors that you might want to be considering when you're looking at marketing your calves here in 2023. We're going to tie all this together when we come back. And for me, the biggest question is, can I get my dollar back? Our industry has no shortage of inputs if we want to put as many as we want to in them. But at the end of the day, we want to know that we're getting our money back. We're going to talk more with John on that as we tie this all up when we return here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills. My guest today is Dr. John Hutchison. He's the Director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health. And our subject today has been talking about factors affecting calf prices. It's factors that they looked back over the years of 2021 and 22 in the calf sales at Superior Livestock. Kansas State University put this all together, over 2.5 million head of calves. So we're not talking just some little old study. This was a lot of data in this, and we've had great discussion already so far. And John, as we look at this now, we've talked about some of these factors. You've identified some things that add value, some things that we could or couldn't be doing. Now let's get into this from the standpoint of from a profitability standpoint, because as I said going into the break, there's no shortage of inputs that we can put into our livestock herds. But at the end of the day, if we're putting something into that, you would hope you're at least, and probably should be getting more than that, your cost back in that. And as we were talking a little bit there when we before the break, you were talking about the VAC 45, VAC 60 type programs, and I told you at break, I said, well, I've in the dry year, I didn't wean calves. We just sold them balling right off the cow because we were dry. Last year we had a little grass, so we went ahead and weaned them. And I'm fighting my head on whether or not I'm getting my money back on selling weaned calves.
You should be. We should, challenge ourselves as ranchers that, everything has a consequence. You spend money on this. We talked about shorten the breeding season. Mm-hmm. Well, how do I do, there's some different strategies to shorten the breeding season, and I want to improve my weaning, wean calves per cows exposed. Well, it's got a cost to it. Mm-hmm. And so I got to understand that cost. And so you're exactly right. I mean, these value-added health programs, you have to understand your cost, and you got to be true to yourself. You can't cheat on cost. You got to make sure. And so you really have to sit down, Justin, with a pencil, and you have to, be like an accountant. I know we all love our accountants that come and ask us for all these numbers, but they're correct. I mean, they're correct. You should know all those numbers. And so you think about it. So weaning these calves, you take them off mom. First you got to figure out your facilities. And your facilities have a cost because somebody has to take care of them. And so you've got care in there. You've got to keep those facilities up to snuff to, keep calves from getting back to the cows or just keeping the calves in. And so you've got some costs there. But, the big cost is feed. And so my friends at Kansas State, Dr. Tonzer, particularly, along with Dr. Renner, they've taken this data and they've put it into the background of a calculator. Mm-hmm. And so if you go to their agmanager.info, website, I think anybody that just types in agmanager.info, Kansas State, there's a Kansas State University Merck calf vaccination program assessment tool. I couldn't think of a longer name or I would have added another word to it, Justin. Yeah. But it goes in there and it has the results of the study and what the attributes do to premiums. And so, if you have cattle that are, medium to large frame and not fleshy and got some even weights and they're BQA certified and you do everything, you're true to what your calves are, and you can put those attributes in there and it's going to help you calculate. And then you're going to have to know a little bit about the market. If you wean calves, say you wean calves in September, you're not going to sell them in September. You're going to hold them 45 days. So you're going to be marketing those closer to, maybe November, depending on 60 days. It might be December. So you got to kind of look on the forward outlook of what those price of those calves are going to be. And then you got to be fair on weight gain. Are they going to gain pound a day? Are they going to gain 2 pounds a day? And then you got to be fair on the cost. And so we got a couple of things working for us in our favor. Calf prices are projected to continue to rise. Feed prices, I'm not a prognosticator on feed prices, but, hopefully they can stay steady and people can sharpen their pencil on their types of feed. And then if you can get the cost of that gain true and, project out what those calves would bring in, say, November, 45 days later, and be true to what they might weigh, how much more weight they might put on in 45 days. If they gain 1.5 pounds, that's almost 90 pounds, that value of that gain. And so, but you have, just like you said, you got to put the pencil to it and you got to be fair. I mean, those calves, you can work with different people. your veterinarian, your nutritionist, your extension agent, whoever, try to guess what those calves would eat per day if you're gonna feed them. But do you have some grass traps to put them in, and can you get by with just 2 pounds of supplement or 4 pounds of supplement? There's a lot of different ways, Justin. But people, I think they'll surprise themselves at times. Obviously those that are more efficient in getting it done, but you got to do that.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out your cost. Again, pretend like you're the accountant this time to do the math. And once you do the math, you have confidence in what's going to happen.
A quick question here, and I had wrote this down when we were talking earlier about some of the management practices and some of the other things that we were talking about, but I want to hit on it really quick, and that is the volume of the lot you're selling, because I know we've got guys that are listening that might have 25, 30, 40, 50 head, and then you've got your middle guys, and then you got your guys with a lot of cattle. Real quick, from a volume standpoint, what was your takeaway from everything?
Yeah, I mean those lot sizes. People like to buy at least one load lot sizes, right? So there's going to be some some premium given to those lot load sizes. But I think this is, again, having a marketing plan. There are plenty of places to market calves that are in smaller groups, particularly if you've got smaller groups that are pretty good weight variation. And, I challenge producers to do things differently. I've seen places that work with sale barns and work with people that market calves where, neighbors come together and, for the good of the price. I mean, they can, weigh their animals individually ear tag them, and then sell them as, a lot load with two other ranchers that have 30 head, and you got 90 head, and you sell them as a lot load. And, you're likely to bring more dollars per hundredweight. And so, but you're right. It's, there is something to be said of lot loads of cattle, and little work can pay off. You had referenced that this, 2021-22, they were drought type years. With the calf prices changing and increasing as they are, anything different that you'd take away as we look at this year versus the results that you had seen in 2021 and 22? Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what we were just talking about, Justin. People need to redo their math because those calf prices, help a lot. Understand those calf prices and where they're heading on what you can do in terms of planning. They like these value-added health programs or getting an implant in those animals. I mean, you're talking over a $50 bill if not much changes and you put an implant in your calves and get them to gain 25 more pounds. And you talk about $2.70 calves, or even, I hear these crazy words about $3 a hundred. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money. And I really think if there is a time to get the pencil out and redo the math, you should do it every year. And so that'd be the biggest take home is need to do the math because calf prices, that revenue, it can help a lot. And then shop around, understand what you need from a nutrition standpoint. And, what's the cost of that per pound of energy or per pound of protein? And so I think there's opportunities with these high calf prices, Justin, to make sure you're doing the math and not using last year's numbers, because the price per pound lends oneself to a lot of opportunities. Yeah, you bet. That's for sure. Dr. John Hutchinson, he is the director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health, has been my guest today. And John, I appreciate you doing this. It was kind of short notice. It was something I'd been working on for quite a while to get an interview on this. And I appreciate you doing this here and joining us here today on the Working Ranch Radio Show. You bet. It was a pleasure. And hopefully all the listeners can hear the excitement in my voice, because I enjoy my job, but I enjoy being able to have conversations like this where I bring information. Again, Kansas State, Merck, and Superior all together bringing information to try to generate more revenue for ranchers. And so in their calves, and hopefully everybody took something away. There's not one thing that we talked about, Justin, that a rancher couldn't do, even if it's just one thing. There's that one thing still makes a positive impact on the revenue. Dr. John Hutchinson, my guest here today, Director of Beef Cattle Technical Services with Merck Animal Health, on really a subject that I think a lot of us really need to be thinking of. As he said from the very beginning, it all starts with a marketing plan and having that in our mind as we're working forward to the final product. If you really step back and think about it, as ranchers, we've worked too hard
to not put a little time and effort into our marketing plan and looking at these factors that we talked about here today that affect calf prices, things you could be doing, maybe shouldn't be doing, and even how you need to be penciling things, because it's pretty easy to put a lot of input into this, a lot of time that's also a cost to our enterprise as well, and really not take some time to think about, are we getting that net return at the end of the day? So a lot of great things we talked about here today. By the way, he had mentioned the Kansas State University tool that is available. I will put that in the link on our podcast site. You'll get to it from there. And again, if you want to go to the website yourself, you can go to Kansas State University's agmanager.info and you can search your way through that. But I will put the link to that tool in the description of this podcast, and you can find it by going to workingranchrradio.com. Stay with us after the break. Meteorologist Don Day joins us as we take a look at our long-term weather when we return on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Do you have a young child, grandchild, niece, or nephew that loves the weather and wants to learn more? Day Weather has produced a children's weather journal full of weather facts, fun weather experiments, coloring pages, and pages to record weather observations for every season of the year. The weather journal is for ages 3 to 7 and designed to be fun and educational. The interactive weather projects are fun for the whole family to take part in. For only $10, the Day Weather Journal is a great gift idea for any occasion. Click on our Amazon link to order at dayweather.com.
And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills as we head now in taking a look at our long-term weather today, brought to you by Allflex. Cattle identification and record keeping should be easy, so tie it all together using your visual tags, your EID tag, and your genetic data to one management number by using the Allflex matched sets. Take a look, learn more at allflexusa.com. And joining us now with a look at our long-term weather is meteorologist Don Day. And Don, we just come out of last week where we did see a little bit of that winter wheat country of Kansas and northern Texas into Colorado and places of that get a little bit of moisture, but we're heading now into a weather pattern that shows kind of a hot, dry pattern for a bit.
Well, let's call it a warmer pattern.
Okay.
It may not necessarily be dry.
Okay.
But those areas you just mentioned, 1 to 3 inches of rain, and they haven't seen that much rain with one system in a long, long time. And so that was certainly good news, but there's always winners and losers. And we have a lot of Nebraska that just didn't get much out of that system, as well as some of the northern counties of Kansas. But we are seeing a transition. And I think what we saw with that system in the Southern Plains is kind of an indication of some changing weather patterns. And boy, we're going to see that. We are certainly going to see warm, high pressure build over the western states, kind of a reversal. You know, for the whole winter and for most of spring, it's been colder than average in the northern plains in the west, while it's been much warmer than average in the east. But we're going to head into the first couple of weeks of May with the opposite pattern. The warmest weather will be in the west. The coldest weather will be in the east.
Yeah. Well, and when I looked at what you kind of were looking at for this next week, you know, that Missouri River kind of was our halfway point. And when we looked to the west of that, it was definitely the warmer weather that we see and that cooler weather, you know, east of that area. So when we look at that, one of the biggest issues now we're looking at with this warmer weather coming in is then this runoff that we see from the pretty significant snowpacks in the mountain areas of the country.
Yeah, I think it's a foregone conclusion. We're going to be hearing about flooding in the news from California into the Great Basin states, Nevada, as we get into Utah, especially with their huge snowpack. You know, the Alta ski area recorded some snowfall here over the past week, 901 inches of snow at Alta ski area above Salt Lake. I mean, that is an incredible amount of snow when you put it together. And with these warm temperatures, what really tends to be a problem is when it's not only really warm during the day and you're getting melting, but staying warm at night. Mm-hmm. And so you have a 24-hour snow melt. That's a concern. On top of that, yes, while we do have high pressure coming in, we do see a pattern that is going to bring some thunderstorm and shower activity to parts of the Rockies and Plains as we get to next week, and especially the week after that. So we could see the combination of some rain with those warmer temperatures. So that is certainly going to be giving us a lot of concern for flooding.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of misspoke when we started there at the beginning. I said hot and dry. Of course, that's what in my mind I was kind of dramatic, as we all are when we talk about weather, right? We're always dramatic. It's like, oh, But anyway, so you say there's going to be maybe some moisture in this warmer pattern. What's the time frame that this weather pattern that we're seeing? Because you said we could be stuck in that for just a bit. What's the time frame? How long do you think that's going to kind of hang in there?
Well, it could go on for a couple of weeks where we see this cooler pattern in the east and this warmer pattern in the west. So I do think it's going to have a little bit of staying power. But what you do see in this type of pattern is you do see just enough low pressure come off the Pacific. And when you get into May, you get into the atmosphere that is starting to really warm up in the southern latitudes, but you still have cold air aloft. So it doesn't take much of a system to set off shower and thunderstorm activity during the warmest part of the day. So that is something that we may see in this pattern, to where maybe if this pattern was developing in June or July, it would be a completely dry one, but having it happen in May could lead to those showers and thunderstorms.
Okay. So when we see that cooler weather on the, kind of that Ohio, Tennessee Valley areas and down on that eastern part of the country, are they looking at then moisture with that cooler weather?
They will. They've seen some of that already. The Gulf Coast in the southeastern United States is getting wet, and they're going to see a lot of wet weather in New England into the early parts here of this coming week. And certainly they've really gotten a lot of weather here over the last couple of days. And we will see it, believe it or not. It may be cool enough in some of the central and southern areas of the United States. It may reduce the amount of tornado activity or the threat because the reversal of the cooler weather settling in down there. So cooler and wet, but not necessarily will it be widespread severe weather, which would certainly be good.
So this is not something we don't usually talk horse racing, but are we looking at running in the mud at the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, I think that is a real possibility. And hey, it's Derby time. I gotta go find my bolo and my hat.
Yeah. All right. Well, Don, appreciate you joining us here today with a look at our long-term weather.
Thanks for having me.
And again, that was meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. His website can be found at dayweather.com, and from there you can find a link to his daily video podcast that he kicks out every Monday through Friday morning. Our weather today brought to you by Allflex. Cattle identification and record keeping should be easy, so you can tie now your visual tag and your EID tag and the genetic data to one management number by using the Allflex match sets. Learn more by going to the website at allflexusa.com. And be sure to join us next week on our weather. The captain and I were talking this last week, and he had read and heard some information out there about some warm water bubbles or warm water patches that are floating through the ocean and then surfacing, and he had some questions on that. So we're going to talk about that next week and how that's affecting our water temperatures in the ocean as well. Meteorologist Don Day is familiar with that and has some answers that might help us along in understanding what's taking place in that regard. Well, stay with us. When we come back, we'll put a wrap on this week's edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. A lot of great information on our program here today, and you may not have caught it all and you want to go back and listen to it again. You can simply do that by going to pretty much any podcast provider out there or directly to our podcast site at workingranchradio.com, and you can find download it and listen to it from there. If you have any questions, you have any ideas or comments about shows, please do not hesitate at all. Send me an email. It's justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Well, the Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. You can get your subscription started easily today by going to their website at workingranchmag.com. Well, be sure to join us at the same time, same place next week or on your favorite podcast provider. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.